Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give a few more people some time to get into the webinar, and we will be starting in just about 1 to 2 minutes.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Arno Grunwald from BetterWorks, and I'm one of the hosts of this webinar, and I will uh, be tagged along by Brett Knowles, whom I will introduce in just a minute. Welcome to this webinar organized by BetterWorks and PM Square on the topic of OKRs and employee engagement. This is a fascinating topic. We hope that our title intrigued you and elicited your curiosity. Indeed, OKRs and employee engagement are rarely talked about together. They typically live in different worlds. OKRs are known as a business tool, a management tool invented by Andy Grove at Intel, and later made famous by John Doerr, who famously introduced them to the Google founders. And employee engagement, on the other hand, has a reputation or is belonging to the HR realm, right? It's about employees, how they feel, how motivated they are. And well, in recent years, employee engagement has been connected to something else, to performance management, right? And indeed, there's been tons of great studies showing that employee engagement sets the stage for great individual and team performance, and that performance fuel engagement. What we will explore in today's webinar is that OKRs and employee engagement are much closer, much more synergistic than people typically think. And a corollary to this, and I hope will convince you, is that HR should care more about OKRs, about goal setting, goal tracking, ongoing goal conversations on progress. And that the business side should take more notice about employee engagement, should own employee engagement. And that, of course, without people, there's no business success. So let me move to the next slide. Um, a little bit about me. My name is Arno Grunwald. I'm an analytics guy at heart. I spent 10 years of my careers in the pharmaceutical industry, where there is, well, a lot of data to be mined to solve very complex business problems. And then I switched gears. In the last 6 years, I did analytics in the HR technology industry, which brings me here. 6 years ago, I founded an employee engagement analytics company called Hyphen. Um, and we help global organizations better listen to their employees and better act on the ongoing feedback from their employees to continuously improve. And earlier this year, Hyphen was acquired by BetterWorks. BetterWorks, a software leader in the space of OKRs and performance management. And I'm now their chief strategy officer, kind of telling the world about why OKRs, continuous performance management, and employee engagement should be managed together. I'm super excited today to be joined by Brett Knowles. Brett is one of our top partners at BetterWorks and founder and leader of PM Square, a world-renowned thought leader in the space of performance management and a guru of OKRs. With that, I will let you, Brett, introduce yourself a little bit more. I'm sure there's more to it, and start the presentation.
Okay. Well, good afternoon and morning, everyone. I'm thrilled, as Arno is, to have this opportunity to share with you, what we know about OKRs and, the journey organizations go on. And about the topic, about talking about employee engagement. This is a recent study that Slack did, and when I say recent, it's July and August. So this is talking to us about the event of COVID. And so I'm thrilled to have the opportunity of sharing with you what we've learned about employee engagement as we've been implementing OKRs. But what we've learned is incredibly timely. What this graph and other research has been telling us is that obviously employee engagement is super, super critical in this new post-COVID world, as we've got a hybrid between remote workers and on-site, and that scenario keeps changing. What we've noticed is COVID is making the employee experience equation more complicated than it was. And we've discovered that one of the most significant things we need to focus on going forward is building that team cohesion in light of the financial and other stresses caused by COVID, as well as the social isolation. So what we're talking about here should be of use to you immediately. Now, as we're getting ready for this presentation, I thought I would do some research on what the heck employee engagement is. And we researched over 200 articles, and the problem is that everyone seems to define employee engagement in a different way, and it looks almost like new definitions are popping up every day. So what we did is we took the lazy person's way, and we just did the analysis. We did a word cloud based on the counts of when words appeared. And if you've used a word cloud before, what happens is the larger the font is, the more a word appears. And so when we looked at employee engagement, this is what employees are worried about and what causes engagement. So you can see that obviously the most important thing that they're focusing in on is purpose. If we can help an employee understand their purpose, how they contribute to the success of the organization and the overall mission, really good things happen. And by the way, the color of the font and the type of font is meaningless. It's just the size that we need to focus on. Now, what we find is autonomy down there in the bottom right comes in second place. And there's a three-way tie between reward and recognition, psychological safety, working environment, and leadership. So these are the key things that employees are searching for in terms of employee engagement and what we need to be focusing in on in this COVID world. Now, what's interesting is as we've implemented OKRs in, I'm going to say the last 1,000 organizations we've worked on, we've discovered this intriguing thing, and that is the act of building your OKRs also is the act of building employee engagement. In other words, as you build an OKR, that activity of building the OKR is simultaneously building your employee engagement. So let me explain, what that looks like. The idea is if we work with employees, they're going to define their own OKRs, how their work leads up to the North Star, the corporate strategy. And then from there, leadership provides a certain element of what contributes to employee engagement. So as they build their OKRs, they're also building a second layer of that employee engagement equation. Makes sense. What we also discovered is as you use OKRs, as you build that OKR muscle, that the practice inside your organization, that also helps build employee engagement. And then finally, as you begin having these more meaningful performance conversations, feedback and recognition, CFRs, whether those are at the one-on-one level, the team level, or the department level, all of them are helping build that employee engagement that's so critically important. So again, our conclusion was, as you go through this OKR cycle, it actually builds engagement. The fastest way to build employee engagement is to build your OKRs. So now that's my hypothesis. Let's step through it. So that first part of the equation, as employees build their OKRs. So again, if we take a look at the word cloud, as you set your objectives and key results at the individual level, obviously your OKRs are defining your purpose, right? The objectives says, this is my purpose. This is what I need to do. And in so doing, it connects you to the organization. It gives you that belonging that we crave and helps you understand what your contribution is to success. So again, as you define your OKRs, you're defining your purpose. Now, eventually you should be reviewing your OKRs with your leader, and your leader is going to affirm that, and that becomes confirmation of your purpose. Now, let's step back for a second. I've discovered that there's many definitions of what an OKR is. So I'm going to share with you, what my definition of OKR is, and you can see if it makes sense with what you know. I believe an OKR is just a verb, noun, key result, target, date. So let's say you're working for a pharmaceutical company, and its overall mission is to alleviate COVID-19, the topic of the day. And I'm an inside salesperson. So my objective might be the trusted advisor. So verb, be them, and the noun, trusted advisor. So that's my objective. Now, the key result, what would I have more of or less of in this role of trusted advisor? Well, maybe I take a look at the number of recommendations that I've made that actually gets implemented within the physicians we talk to. And my goal is to have, my target is 5 in Q1. Now, let's say in Q2, I'm going to double that. I'm going to have at least 10 of my recommendations because I'm going to, develop myself as a trusted advisor. But a miracle happens. In Q3, I'm going to get up to 50 and, maybe up to 60 in Q4. So that's my objective and key result. My objective, be the trusted advisor, key result, number of recommendations, target, you can see, and date. That's all an OKR is. But actually there's more, because to make that happen, maybe I need help from HR. Maybe I need to take some training on how to be a proper advisor. So we're going to train all the inside sales reps on, advisor skill sets. And our goal is to have 20% of our advisors and inside sales reps trained in Q1, 40% in Q2, 60 in Q3, and all are going to be trained by Q4. So we've built that new skill set. And then the last thing we're going to go do is do a marketing campaign that promotes our inside sales as those trusted advisors. And so we're going to draft the messaging in Q1, test and refine Q2, launch in Q3. And it's a combination of launching it in Q3 with being having enough critical mass trained that we get this miracle happening in Q3 in terms of the 50 recommendations implemented. So OKR should also show the cross-functional nature of work, how we need to work across the silos to achieve success. So now I go back to, it helps us define our purpose, right? If I have this in front of me, it's clear to me what my purpose is, what my contribution is to the organization. I'll draw you a diagram. So, as an individual, my inside sales person, they're going to become the trusted advisor. And that meets the expectations of my leader. Now, in fact, my leader and his peers need to define their OKRs to meet the purpose of their leader, and so forth. So the idea is my purpose helps me understand where I fit within the organization and what I do for my part, my team. But at the top of the organization, we have that North Star, our overall mission, in this case, eliminate COVID-19. And so I should also understand how I link directly with that North Star. In other words, the objectives are not only going to define my purpose, but they also give me the meaning. And that meaning, we know from research, is super important to millennials, but in fact is really important to everyone. So if I take that word star that we had before and we add that link up to the North Star, what we begin seeing is it gives us a whole bunch of other attributes that are required for employee engagement. Again, as I build up my objectives and my key results, I'm defining my purpose. It grants me authority. It makes my work meaningful, allows me to understand the cause I'm working towards and what my role is there. Helps me sort out, where I need mastery. In fact, for those of you who, like me, are fans of Daniel Pink, you'll begin to see his intrinsic motivators showing up, right? Purpose, mastery, autonomy. So, all these bodies of work kind of link together. And I'm arguing that the secret sauce for building this stuff is building your OKRs. I could go on the employee side, but you get the idea. Let's move on to the leadership. Leadership brings other things into that employee engagement equation. So again, if we take a look at the overall word cloud, as leaders begin building their objectives about leadership and about how they manage the business and about the mentoring they provide, they're explicitly providing other elements of employee engagement. In other words, as the leaders build their OKRs, they're adding that leadership component to what employees need. And this is super important, obviously, these days. But what's even more important, we've discovered, especially now, there's an element of employee engagement that's about the environment, right? And a year ago, it was all about having a nice offices and lunches brought in and masseurs and all the other accoutrements that make the work environment delightful. Well, now it's a bigger challenge, because now I need to make that work environment delightful, but it's not in the office anymore. It's in people's homes. And so as we begin being more explicit about my objectives of building that work environment, it includes not only the physical environment, like making sure that they've got somewhere to work in the right environment, but beyond that, having the right software. What are the right tools that we now need in this COVID world? What are the right methods and workload we should be working on as people work at home? And what's the right protocol for time between Zoom meetings or working on weekends and stuff like that? The idea is that whole work environment is also owned by leadership. And if we set up the leadership OKRs, we can explicitly define those elements that contribute to employee engagement. So again, I'm repeating the same theme. As the employees build their OKRs, they're defining part of employee engagement. As leadership builds out their OKRs, they're defining another part of the employee engagement. That makes sense. The part that is interesting to us is, as we watch people using OKRs, it actually impacts the system. So I think of it as a Hawthorne effect, but there's some physics that says the act of studying a system affects a system. As you begin measuring these things and making that performance transparent, you also contribute to employee engagement. So again, if we take a look at what that performance transparency brings in, is allows people to be able to self-feedback. So because I no longer meet my boss in the hallways and get that affirmation, or my teammates, I need a way where I can self-assure that I'm doing the right things and I'm making progress. So the OKRs, the fact that we have that cadence, whether it's a weekly or monthly cadence, gives me that ongoing feedback, that reassurance I'm doing the right thing, and allows me to monitor my own performance without requiring external feedback. But I think most importantly is it creates teamwork, because the transparency, think of playing any sport. If you're playing soccer and you're playing forward, you need to know what the midfield is supposed to be doing, what their purpose is, and how well they're doing it. The same with defense. So you can figure out, as a forward, can I be aggressive and attack my opponent, or do I need to play back and cover for a weak midfield or defense? That's what should be happening in our organizations. If I understand everyone's purpose and I have that transparency, and I can see how they're performing, I can work better as a team member. I can let my team members know I've got the capacity or resources to help them where they need support, or vice versa. So that's not the employee doing that. That's not the leader doing that. That's the actual OKR system. So, as you're using a tool like BetterWorks, that transparency and your ability to go wherever your inquiring mind wants to go actually builds out the teamwork. But it also allows us to do is that whole feedback, being appreciated for the work you're doing, being able to hand out encouragement to others as you see them doing the right thing, feel like the organization cares. And it ultimately begins creating that culture, but also creates that rewarding structure. I mean, here's what we know. A lot of research tells us employees are more loyal to their teammates than their leaders. What does that mean? If teammates can reassure teammates, it's more meaningful. It allows us to get better intrinsic rewards associated with work. And that becomes, obviously super important in the COVID world. So I've talked about what the employees do, what the leaders do, what actually having enabling technology does. But all that, I mean, OKRs are 20% technical, 80% social, just like leadership. So there's a social part of this as well. How do we have the right conversations, the right feedback, the right recognition? And I'm emphasizing this is not only one-on-one. This is teams being able to have risk-free, psychologically safe conversations about the performance, give each other feedback and recognize each other, whether it's in a department, team, an ad hoc cross-functional group, and so on. And by doing that, again, if we go back to the word star, we discover that, not only do we get the psychological safety, which is, super important, and understanding that our work is meaningful, but it creates that whole social structure that is, super important. What we've noticed in this, COVID world is that there is a huge stress involved in the economic uncertainty, but also caused by social isolation. The challenge is this. The challenge is the only people that we interact with are, people inside of our bubble and the people at work. And the work interaction is very structured. And obviously, there's only so much that you share inside the bubble. And so there's a whole component of our life that is now missing. And that's what's causing a whole bunch of social isolation. And it's not possible to solve all of that, but there are many elements that we can solve by having a different sort of conversation in our performance meetings. And that's what we're pushing towards. OKRs make it more risk-free and allows us to sort of deal with root issues in a better way. So what I've tried to explain to you is that by the act of actually building your OKRs is actually the same thing you use to actually build your employee engagement. They are one in the same item, two sides of the same coin. The fastest way to build employee engagement is by building OKRs. And if you build OKRs, it will build employee engagement. But it's not enough just to build it. It has to be part of your ongoing conversations and part of the day-to-day activities, or it becomes a new daily habit. So that's what I want to share with you, that idea that it's not only about measuring employee engagement. And it's important to note that what we're talking about here is picking up data from the transactional world, right? These OKRs come from the day-to-day activities. So this allows you to monitor your progress on an ongoing basis. And so that's the message I wanted to share with you about how building OKRs actually helps you build employee engagement. We've done a bunch of research that took us to this conclusion, and I'm going to pass it over to Arnaud, who's going to go to that research in more detail and help you understand how to use it.
Thank you, Brett. I love your examples. Very, very timely topic. Well, before I move on, I wanted to apologize and say that I forgot to tell you that this is meant to be an interactive webinar. So please put questions in the Q&A and we'll tackle them at the end of this presentation. We have prepared this webinar aiming to present for 35 to 40 minutes and leaving 5-10 minutes for Q&A. And we definitely want to have a discussion with you, and we will give you some time back. We will not use the full hour. So Brett has showed us the nature itself of OKRs, as well as the practice of OKRs and CFRs are fostering employee engagement, or at least that's the promise. And we have not discussed, but it's been proven, and we know that employee engagement fuels awesome performance through engaged teams and individuals. So what I want to focus on right now is the following questions. How do we know this works? How can we measure How can we measure what is going well, what is going less well, and continuously improve at the company level, at the division level, at the team level? How do I change my practice of OKRs to fix potential disengagement issues and unlock that next level of performance? So I want to come back to the graph that Brett started with. And I wanted to make just a simple point to tell you that it's not as easy. In this graph is interesting, but to me, it's not insightful because it's not actionable. Let's say, this is at the market level or across companies, but let's say I'm a CHRO and these are the results across my company. I don't really know how to act on this because I need a deeper level of granularity. What it would be more insightful would be to be able to break down the data at a level of granularity that proves real insight. So here you go. We actually split the data, and you can see that this negative rating on belonging actually is different whether you look at the data at the senior management level, the middle management level, and individual contributor level. Indeed, during COVID, individual contributors and middle managers have never craved so much clarity and transparency from senior managers. So seen from the senior management perspective, there is a sense of belonging. But the middle managers and the individual contributors don't have it. They feel like they don't have enough information. They're not connected to the decisions that are taken at senior management level, et cetera. That is more actionable. This is just an example, but you get the point. It's not as easy as it seems. So let me guide you through some of the best practices that we see our customers establish. Measuring and acting on employee engagement at a high level is a fairly simple framework. You need to collect data, you need to understand the data and derive insights, and then you need to make sure that as an organization, we act on these insights. Let me first start by saying it's not about having a great survey software, and that's not my point here at all. Otherwise, SurveyMonkey and Google Forms would probably be the best thing. It really starts with executive buying to listen and take action on employee feedback. Without that, you have nothing. Then, of course, you want to have different formats in which you're asking for feedback and employee opinions, whether it is long-form engagement surveys or recently the trend has been towards more pulsing or more frequent polling, and even some tools where employees can come and express their own opinions without being asked for it. So what we call an employee voice platform. But first and foremost, it needs to be supported by executives because that will drive the process, that will drive action, and that will drive change. The second thing that our customers ask us about is, when do we ask? At which frequency, at which cadence to collect these employee opinions? Turns out you probably want to collect different kinds of feedback at different points in the employee life cycle. And we see it as best practice to at least do one or several onboarding questionnaires or surveys, regular engagement surveys and/or pulses, and exit to know why people are leaving, what are the reasons why there is voluntary attrition, and how we can keep employees that are still in the organization. And ideally, this is done in just one single experience, one single platform. It's not only about the survey taking experience for employees to have always the same look and feel, but it's really the power of linking the data, being able to link the data that you collect during the onboarding phase, the development and retention phase, and the exit phase gives you, significantly incremental insights, because you're able to do longitudinal analysis and cohort analysis and to understand, what might drive things over time. It's also important, managers and leaders have many reports and dashboards they have access to. So we actually we have worked with customers that used to do an onboarding survey in Google Forms, an exit survey in SurveyMonkey, and an engagement survey with a consulting firm. Extremely confusing and underwhelming from an insights generation perspective. The third aspect, and probably the most important one of a good listening program, is the content itself. What are we going to ask at these different points in the employee life cycle? What should be the topics? What are the key tenets of employee engagement that are worth measuring consistently? And even inside these topics, what should be the questions? What are good questions, right? Are we phrasing the questions correctly? Are we avoiding unconscious bias? That's by far actually the number one question that we get from our customers. And what we tell them not to do is to search on Google. Because you search Google, you land on the first blog about employee engagement, you copy and paste the questions, and then at the end of the process, you realize that you couldn't really back up the questions and defend your questionnaire when you present to senior management. So please do not Google. What we have done is that we have partnered with academics. We have partnered with the Talent and Organization Department at the NYU Stern School of Business. And what we have asked them to do is, and this was not paid, so not biased, we have asked them to please look at the past 2 decades of research and publications on engagement, work-life balance, psychological safety, and to come up with a framework and a set of questions that is solid and that we can have all our customers use. They came up with 13 categories that you can see on the slide here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but what they ensured with statistical analysis is that these categories are mutually exclusive and completely exhaustive, MECE, which means that we are asking all the right topics and they're not overlapping too much. So it's a complete description and a good description of engagement. And then at the next level of detail for each of the categories, I'm not going to go into that, but we have between 2 and 5 questions, so 50 questions total. And we allow the customers to shorten it. So you can have a small questionnaire with 15 questions, a big one with 50 questions. But the point is, all that has been statistically tested, and all that has been used by hundreds of organizations now. So tens or if not hundreds of thousands of employees have answered these same questions, which provides very valuable benchmarks, industry benchmarks to our customers. So there's not only a value in knowing that the questions have been validated by academics, but there's also the value of the data that is accumulating. And as you participate and as you use these same templates, you're actually making the benchmark even stronger. It's really important to pick the right questions from the get-go, because typically you ask the same questions over time, right? You want to see how things improve. So if you make a mistake in the beginning, then it will compound over time. So that's something that you really want to pay very close attention to. So here I gave the example of the work that we did with NYU on engagement surveys, but of course, at other points in the life cycle, our customers are also asking, what questions do I ask for exit surveys, onboarding surveys, etc. And we also did the work and have templates for them. Now you know what to ask and when to ask. Launching a survey, again, it's not hard, and survey softwares do that really well. I think what is really important to say is modern technology provides, it's awesome. It provides real-time results and real-time calculations with comparisons, prioritization, trending over time. It's now what you see on this slide is now considered probably blocking and tackling of survey software. But what's important, and I've done quite a bit of analytics in my career, is that you don't get into analysis paralysis. You're not trying to show too much to make things too complicated. Remember that your audience here is the HR team, senior management, and hopefully people managers in the company. So to me, analytics should be 50% data crunching and 50% making it easy for your audience to consume and make informed decisions from it. The algorithms underlying can be very complex, but the visualizations need to be super easy to understand. And all that to, the new thing about having all this data in the cloud with real-time data is really to avoid that you have a big PDF or a printed report that is collecting dust on the CEO or the CHRO's desk, right? The data can be democratized and the insights can be shared down to the people that matter, meaning the HR team and the people managers who are your true agents of change, right? If you don't have your managers owning the data and being accountable for changing things for the better, then change is not going to happen as easily. And basically, the hard part is turning that accountability into a workflow, into change. What do I mean by this? So very often when you expose the data to a manager, they have this consciousness of what they're doing well, what they're doing less well, or what their employee needs, what they need less of. So there is a willingness definitely to fix issues, but how do you help them go from that awareness to driving change and measuring change? Easy steps. You need to help them define the right actions to take. It's not easy for a manager to know exactly how to fix even things as simple as communications in their team. So you need to provide them with a library of recommendation for each topic or category. You need to link maybe with your learning management system so that you can suggest automatically courses to remedy disengagement issues. You need to get them to commit, right? Just like an OKR, you need to get them to commit to an action by a certain date and not let it slip, not let it slide to the back burner, but rather provide transparency to management, even send reminders, being a little bit pushy, escalate if necessary, because without action from your managers, nothing of all the hard work that we've described so far is worth it. With action, you can hope for improvement and you can measure again, right? We get into a cadence of measuring the key tenets of employee engagement and see if the actions drove the score improvements that we were hoping. Actually, I mentioned OKRs just now, and it's time probably to close the loop. More and more of our customers actually ask their managers to enter their employee engagement survey follow-ups, their action plans as OKRs to highlight to highlight the importance of employee engagement, to provide transparency to the entire organization of what managers are going to do about their issues, and provide focus, accountability, commitment, all the nice things that OKRs bring to the table. So with that, I just wanted to wrap by taking Brett's diagram and putting my topics in it, showing you that really it's one and the same. And that's what we wanted to show you today, that OKRs and employee engagement are very close together. They're very much managed together. The best practices that I describe will allow you to determine if employees feel focused, aligned, committed, stretching. And that's the definition of an individual OKR. Will allow you to determine if managers and leaders are doing their job. Are they empowering employees? And that's a key component of the OKR methodology. These surveys will allow you to determine if employees see that individual performance and team performance on company goals actually drive company performance. And that's what you want from an OKR process. And finally, these surveys will allow you to know if employees actually feel valued recognized and provided opportunities to grow as a result of their good performance. So with that, I'm going to wrap this section, and maybe we can move to questions. Thank you so much for listening, and looking forward to the next 5 minutes of back and forth.
As we do actually have a couple questions, so I'll go ahead and jump right in for you. When building team and individual OKRs, how do the levels below see how a given objective at a team or individual level links back to the company level OKR?
Oh, I think maybe, I don't know, I'll grab that one. So you kind of chicken egg. There's this ongoing debate about are OKRs top down or bottom up? And my argument is they're both. So from the top down, we should be setting that North Star, the overall mission, vision, values, direction of the business, and allow it to get cascaded down. And that's almost a request. I should be able to say, overall, this is what we want to do. And the next level down should respond to that. They should say, to achieve that North Star, here's what my department needs to do. And once we get that agreement between the executive levels, then that department takes it to their teams, and the teams respond to what the department should do. Here's what I think my team does in contribution to that departmental goal, and so on, as far down as you want to go. And the idea would be, those are like service level agreements between each area. So that allows you to see what you could do to connect to the next level up. But the key results part, the setting your goals, targets, is almost a going back up. So given this is my contribution, how much of that can I do given the resources I'm given, the people and money and tools? And I should be able to feed back up what I'm capable of doing. And that goes back up the top. So top down, bottom up. And once I've got that agreement, I should be able to follow that thread up. If I do this for my leader, and my leader's doing, I contribute to that part of the leader's success, and the leader's contributing to their leader in that format, I can follow it up, like watching, tracking the breadcrumbs. And that's that first part of the diagram I showed you. And it works okay on the left brain, but we need the right brain answer as well. And that's the direct linkage up to the top, that green arrow I had on the right-hand side, which is I probably also want to have some element of objective or key result that points right to the top of the overall mission statement. So the example I gave you was an inside salesperson who wanted to become a trusted advisor. That obviously links up to what my leader needs. But I can also understand how that trusted advisor objective links up right to the top. Because if I'm the trusted advisor, I can better influence eliminating COVID-19. So I believe the employees need to be assisted in understanding both the linear aggregation up that they contribute, but also the direct line up, and that way we're covered. And then the affirmation is, that top down, bottom up. Now, the ongoing feedback of OKRs is also super important. As I track how I'm performing, I also reassure myself that I am contributing to what my boss needs and am contributing to that overall purpose. So defining it in the first place is super important because that defines your purpose. Now I need the feedback loop. So we also know you need to reset your OKRs. And in John's book, he argues you do it quarterly. And I would say, absolutely, business as usual, quarterly is good because I need to reassure that connection is still there. Because if leadership changes their objectives, I should be able to realign mine. What we're finding in this COVID world is we have an increased drumbeat. So many of our clients set their OKRs up in January. In March, all of a sudden they have to set new ones because strategies changed. I'm now in lockdown. And then in April, in the new normal, they have to reset them again. And then in June, when we begin moving to the next normal in some of our international clients, I have to reset them again. So this idea of top down, bottom up is not static. I have to keep on adjusting my OKRs to track as my strategy adjusts. And that tempo is going to increase over time.
Great. All right, we've got another one here. Is it necessary to involve all employees in OKRs? If as a company, my objective requires only few employees to participate, should I still create OKRs for everyone?
My opinion is yes, you should, because involvement builds commitment. The more that they're involved in understanding the strategy, the more committed they are to it. Beyond that, our experience is there are very few parts of the organization. issues in the organization that only truly impact a small portion. So even in my example of a trusted advisor, to make that happen, there's a bunch of education that has to happen. We have to understand what the customer needs are. We have to understand what operations does. We have to understand what sales is selling. And so it looks like it's a compartmentalized need. But in fact, the organization's impacted by that in ways that we can't logically understand. And so it's way better to set that North Star, and then we can all align our activities to it, rather than a mechanical breakdown of a very lead by authority equation. So I believe they should all be exposed to it. Now, the follow-on to that question is, do I need to take my OKRs down to the individual level? My opinion is no. We're trying to make teams work first. So let's make sure we understand as a team how we work. So my accent, if you're trying to figure it out, is Canadian. So if I'm thinking of ice hockey, I've got a forward line, a defense line, a goalie. They all have different objectives and goals and different measures, but they need to work cohesively as a team. And so I need that transparency. So as events happen in one part of the organization, the rest can see it and know how to react to it. So I need to understand the full organization and what their purpose is to understand how it impacts me and my work. So I do think they need to get shared widely, but not necessarily to the individual level. If I can make the teams work, that's an awesome starting point. Now, in some cases, you may want to take it down to the individual level, but I don't think it's as necessary as some of our clients think it is.
Arnell, we have one more for you. All this is great, but what do we do if we don't know what our employee engagement is in our company?
Well, that's a fairly simple question. I think you need to go ahead and get started and do your first measurement, and that's going to be your baseline, right? I think it's probably the most powerful experience when you know nothing, and then suddenly you have data across all these tenets, across all these questions, and you can display a heat map to your senior management, and you have these red areas that pop up. Many of them maybe people had an inkling about, and many of them people had no clue about. So it's really this aha moment that then allows you to set up an OKR process that is biased towards fixing these issues, right? If you see more problems around purpose and meaning, then you can put more emphasis on the nature of OKRs and the focus and the alignment and the commitment that people are going to have. If you see more issues on the management and leadership vision side of things, then OKRs can be, the implementation of OKRs can be more insisting on these areas, and so on and so forth. So calculating a baseline, very easy. You take the best template that you find, something like I showed you, and then you take the best analytics that you find, and very quickly, in a matter of weeks, you can develop a baseline that creates that awareness across the company.
Yeah, so what that sounds like is using the survey as a diagnostic instrument. Do the survey first, figure out where the employee engagement gaps are, and then as we begin building those employee engagement OKRs, make sure they're covering off those identified gaps. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, and also the implementation itself of OKRs.
Right.
It allows you, once you do that diagnostic, it allows you to sort of push the right buttons, because an OKR program is pretty comprehensive. You can understand where is it that you can insist on implementing, and what are the traits of OKRs that you want to take advantage of.
Right.
So here's an interesting one, kind of going on that same path. If the OKR framework is not linked to incentive or compensation, why should employees engage? What's in it for them? And additionally, would it not be useful to link OKRs to performance bonus programs?
Well, it's interesting. I would argue that rule number one of OKRs is there's no rule number one. It's not like accounting, where if you don't follow generally accepted accounting principles, bad things happen. So to a certain extent, understand what various authors have read and adjust it to what works in your organization. Now, that said, the compensation thing is an interesting question, because we know that if it's Maslow, right? If my shelter and food are based on my salary, and that's based on OKRs, I might adjust my OKRs so I always win to make sure I pay salary. So there's a skew there. But equally, it's ludicrous to say, hey, these are the OKRs that generate success for the business, but I'm going to compensate you based on something else. So the middle ground that we recommend is use OKRs as part of the performance conversation. So when you're having your CFRs, whether they're monthly or quarterly, you should be able to take a look at how you actually performed and what the targets were, and have a conversation about how well you optimized the world given the chaos that has gone on. And maybe even if you didn't hit that target number, you still do well. Or maybe you did outstandingly well, but in truth, leadership thinks you could have done even better given the circumstances of the period. So I think they need to be included in the conversation, but they cannot be part of the hard formula. In other words, I can't say you get 10% of EBITDA or something, because even if I just think of committed versus stretch goals, because I have different effective success rates in those two, I can't do a mathematical formula. The other thing, as I said to begin with, is it creates a bit of a skew. So in truth, if you think about it, this is more than you need to know, but there really are 6 types of OKRs. They are valuation, navigation, compensation, calibration, communication, and regulation. Each of those metrics are used for a different instrument or different communication mechanism. So communication is how do I communicate to the wider audience. Navigation is how to make decisions on the business to make it effective day to day. Compensation is a slightly different framework. Typically, they're more lagging measures. So those are 3 or 4 answers. But again, what you need to do is craft an answer that works for your organization, and don't get caught in the quagmire of thinking there's only one way to do this.
Great. Well, maybe we have time for just one more quick question before we wrap up here. Is it possible to integrate OKRs with agile methodologies like Scrum?
I would say they're actually synonymous. I would actually describe OKR as agile for leadership, right? So as you build your OKRs, I think you should be able to build your OKRs inside of a week or 2. So think of building an OKR for a department as actually a Scrum activity that we begin, we build it, we launch it by the end. There's learning cycles that happen afterwards, but this is all about quick delivery. Now think about leading the organization. Shouldn't we be able to meet on a Monday and adjust that North Star and then quickly see how it cascades down and ladders back up so that the whole organization has adjusted in that same direction? So this is not a planning cycle that's 16 weeks long. This is a planning cycle that's a week or 2 long. They're all executed as a Scrum, and it allows leadership to manage the business in that same Scrum type format, that same agile, fast response, get that part of the organization sorted out, and then move on to the next one.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Emmy, for your help here. It's time to wrap up. Again, thank you so much for attending. This webinar was put together by BetterWorks and PM Square. A little bit about BetterWorks. We really think that we have something unique in terms of what we call connected execution. There's 3 things really that you need to do well to be a winning organization: strategy, having the right people, and executing on projects. And we are the middleware that links these 3 things. And to our knowledge, we're the only middleware that links these 3 things. We link strategy and projects through OKRs. We link strategy and people through engagement. And we link people to project execution through continuous performance management, the CFRs that we just talked about. If you want to learn more, you know where to find us. Thank you again for your time today. It was a blast, and thank you, Brett. Really had fun organizing this with you.
Great, thank you. I hope everyone learned something from today's session.
Bye.